So today we are continuing the neuroscience of mantra chanting, especially the Om chanting. Last time we had talked about general mantra chanting, like from Yajurveda and other places. What does really Om, that type of a thing happens? So, what it does to the brain, that is exactly what we will be discussing. It is fascinating. I was fired up. I said, I think I need to get much more in depth into it now personally as I'm as I'm uh, Anuji might ask me a lot of questions which I may not have the answer for. Okay, never mind. Okay, so there is a paper in scientific report which is basically a nature journal. So what they did was they had done some Buddhist chanting. Of course, Om chanting and Buddhist chanting is basically the same thing. Om is the father of all mantras. So what did was they did electrophysiological correlates. Electrophysiology means they just put the wires all around the scalp and find out which area is getting and the signals, what is going on, and the rest state, and after the during the chanting and after the chanting. So I'm not going to discuss the real detail of the paper. It is extremely intense paper, and it is tough to get. First of all, they are using computer modeling terms and all that. So they obviously these people have to be having physics and or computer background in order to study the brain. So brain cannot be studied by biologists alone. So they have, because it's so much of interaction going on, that's when the network system comes, the whole network starts to come. Now there are two keywords in this underlined red underlined thing. One is during religious chanting there is the posterior cingulate cortex shows the great largest decrease in eigenvector centrality. Now this is a mouthful of mouthful of words, right? Too much words. They say potentially due to regional endogenous generation of delta oscillations. Now, two keywords are there. One is eigenvector centrality, and other one is delta oscillations. Now, what is delta oscillation? What is eigenvector centrality? Only computer fellows who are deep into computer science, not the peripheral science, the the hardware designing part of the science, or those who are making algorithms. In order for the hardware to think properly, those are the people who will just get it. And I had to seek help from computer scientists around in my area, where there are quite a few of them, very brilliant ones, especially in University of Chicago. Those are the ones who do all this kind of work. So I'll just give you the what is a delta oscillation to start with. Delta oscillation are the frequencies between very low frequencies, right? And predominantly in the brain which is in deep sleep, basically deep sleep or in deep meditation also, like when we go into almost as good as conscious deep sleep. Meditation is nothing but conscious deep sleep, but they don't know a whole lot of conscious deep sleep stuff. But what essentially in the in the unconscious deep sleep, or you can say slow wave sleep, those are the frequencies that are predominant. Okay, and so what is that? What does it do? They are the smallest, slowest measurable brain waves, right? And that is present in dreamless sleep, right? Or sometime when you are induced with anesthesia, that's the time when it shows up. Now, this has a role in sleep also, because we know that we know, pretty much everybody knows that delta activity is a key indicator of depth of the sleep. If you do not have intense, at least 1 hour 45 minutes deep sleep in your entire 5 6 hour period, then you are susceptible to a lot of brain challenges down the road. That is a very definitive key indicator, because in deep sleep only the real healing happens. The entire body healing happen in deep sleep. Now, that those delta oscillations are important for cognitive function. Now, I'm giving you what Om chanting is, but these are the two keywords which we'll be using in the subsequent slides, right? The delta oscillation and eigenvector centrality and all that. So I'm just giving you an idea what delta oscillation is about. It is responsible for memory consolidation, which means whenever there is something that it actually is hippocampus is a place where the immediate memory gets stored, but it has to get stored for a long term storage in neocortex. So what is happening is the hippocampus is the one which gets the information, and it relays the information to the neocortex over here, all of them. So that's for long term. So during this time, delta oscillation helps in transferring the short term memory to a long term situation. So remember that. So if somebody has a very low delta oscillation, then the long term memory doesn't stay there. So if you even forget about the long term, short term also disappears. So delta oscillations are the ones you can say that it's just like a wave which transfers the short term memory to a long term memory into the neocortex. Neocortex means this part of the brain. Okay. Now, this is what exactly how the delta waves shows. This is how it is. Very slow, very slow. And don't worry about this rest. We'll talk about that some other time when we will be discussing about the sleep per se. Sleep, what is deep sleep, what is um, normal sleep, what is REM sleep, all that stuff we'll talk about later on. And what is alertness and what is synchronization and meditation, all that we'll talk some other time, not today. And of course this is a continuation of that delta oscillation. Homeostatic regulation is very important during that because it helps the balance the wakeful and sleep to maintain overall health. So this is the cusp. It is in the center, in the between, when the wakeful state and the state and deep sleep, all these things are correlated with this delta activity, right? In pathological conditions, especially in the with those conditions which originate in the midbrain means the Agya chakra region. If there is any challenge going on in that level, it is bound to have Parkinson disease or Alzheimer. Sorry, not Alzheimer, just dementia itself. That is bound to happen. It is that predominant here. So somebody who is constantly worrying all the time has extremely poor deep sleep, which means very poor delta oscillations. So this is exactly what happens. Including developmental disorder and cognitive impairment. These are very poor in these people. Parkinson, as I told you, very important. In Parkinson disease, people do not even show, not even a trace of deep sleep. That is the problem, and that's why they all the time. Eyes are dazed all the time. If you see a Parkinson patient, the eyes are like this, dazed all the time. They cannot sleep well. That is the problem. The origin of delta waves is thalamus, they say, but this is one of the papers that they talk about, but I believe that it is appearing from prefrontal cortex. Prefrontal cortex is the origin the very first delta waves, and then the locus of it shifts to thalamus, and from there the thalamocortical relays all the part of the brain, and that's how the memory from hippocampus goes to the uh, neocortex is this. Don't worry about the names that I'm saying because I cannot compromise on the names, but I have to say also, but I am going to be sharing with you with my uh, hand and all that, so that you can see that what I'm saying is coming from. This is a prefrontal cortex area where mothers put bindi, or we put the tika here. That's the place for prefrontal cortex. I think that's where it is generating. But originally, but then the locus transfers to the thalamus, and that's what they're talking about. Thalamus is just the central part, very central part of the brain, which has sends all its um, fibers all over the afferent fibers all over the brain. So anything that goes into the brain has to go through thalamus. So just remember that. So that's why they say that since they could not find the reason, that's why they call thalamus, but I believe that it is coming from prefrontal cortex, and that it is very much important in consciousness research also. And now in west they do not have any understanding about consciousness research as much as Raman Maharshi or great people, or even Sadhguru. He knows more about consciousness research at individual level than all of the science combined. Now, there was another term which was we talked about eigenvector centrality, right? Now, don't worry about I was very distraught when they said eigenvector. Why are they talking about eigenvector centrality in neuroscience paper? Then I found out all these fellows are all computer scientists. So no wonder they had to talk like that. Now, let's understand this term. This is beautiful term, and it is a so let's say eigenvector centrality measures a node's influence within a network by considering not only its connection but also the influence of the nodes it connects to, assigning higher score to the nodes connected to other influential nodes. Now, this is a mouthful. I'll tell you what. Now these guys are connected to this, right? The point now then this fellow gets a 0.39 score. Now if this 0.39 score connects to this also, but this connects to this which is already connected to several, so this fellow gets a higher score than this fellow. That's all there is. So the one who is connected to higher, even though this fellow is connected to here, he doesn't get higher score because he is connect he this fellow gets higher score because he is connected to others higher scorers like this, plus this fellow connecting to here. So that's why it's not, it's just like almost like I gave an example. Imagine a party where some people are connected to many people, right? But those who are not very influential, say I may be connected to 10 of them, but that since 10 of them are not influential enough, but if I am connected to the host, because the host is connected to all the 50 people in that, then I get a higher score. That's how it is, right? The node with a fewer connections but to the host of the party, but I am connected to host party, would have a higher eigenvector centrality score. So I will have a higher eigenvector centrality score compared to the rest of them. Of course, the hub is the no is the host. So how do you connect this to brain and Om? That's the question we have to ask. Okay. During Om chanting, posterior cingulate cortex shows the largest decrease in eigenvector centrality. Means, so what is eigenvector? Decrease in centrality means if I am connected to more nodes or more uh, network in the brain, which means I am encouraging more noise. Okay, that's what it is. So when you chant Om, that noise decreases. Largest decrease in eigenvector centrality means largest decrease in the noise that this particular region is creating. Which region? This posterior cingulate cortex. This whole green thing is a cingulate cortex. This is anterior. Oops, sorry. So this is anterior and this is posterior. This whole green thing is a cingulate cortex. Very, very, very important region in the brain. Very important. Now with Om chanting, what happens? Now amongst this particular anterior and posterior, this is the one which makes all the noise in the planet, in the brain, because it is connected to various powerful networks and the nodes of those networks. I mean, this fellow knows the knower of the knowers. So this that's why the more noise coming from here. So This is the one which is responsible for default mode network. Default mode network is is that part of the network of the brain which is the most active when we are doing nothing, and when we are complaining, criticizing, comparing, or thinking about the past. This didn't do, that fellow did not do well to me. This when I said hello to this first fellow, he did not smile at me. All that nonsense that you think about is a default mode network. So the default mode network activity is governed by this guy, posterior cingulate cortex. So when you chant Om, there is a decrease in the eigenvector centrality, means decrease in the noise, I would say, potentially due to endogenous generational delta oscillation. So that, which means Om initially starts the process of delta oscillation, right? That's what it is means. Now, what are the different things that we will be discussing today? Now you understand the eigenvector centrality as well as the delta frequency and all that. Delta frequency is the initiator of the calmness in the brain, and that's what and that shuts down the DMN. Initially, auditory processing, just listening to the Om is just like noise for you, right? And DMN get fired up about, oh, there is another noise. Okay, let's fire, gets activated. But you have no idea what Om can do. It brainwave and that Om chanting initiates the brainwave entrainment, and then the activation of the reward system, and then the stress reduction, and the increased parasympathetic activity, activation of the vagus nerve, then the activation of the DMN. That's where it's at, the activation, and then the real meditation. Everything starts there. It is powerful, most powerful concept that I have heard in my life. Now, what it does, auditory processing. The Om sound is processed in the auditory cortex, which activates the brain default mode network. That is natural, right? Because it does not perceive as Om, which is the sound of the Brahmand. It doesn't perceive like that. It says just another noise. So let's get fired up. Let's get dance with the sound. So then it activates the default mode tab. When this is active, this is called mind wandering. When somebody just says Om, 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 or Om 10 times, 11 times, you are distracted, more distracted than when you are not chanting. This is the reason. Why? Because the default mode network gets all excited. It causes mind wandering, engages in self-referral thinking, with thinking about ourselves, our past, our future, and all that. Not focused on the present moment. That's important, right? DMN includes region like medial prefrontal cortex. Medial prefrontal cortex just below this, all the way inside, right? And the posterior cingulate cortex. Posterior cingulate cortex. Remember, I told you the green part, the back, the the posterior part of the green thing that I showed, and the temporal lobe. These are the ones. The default mode network, salient network, all these are the. Now what happens? The default mode network activates. Eventually, what happens is when you continue chanting the Om, this same default mode network will activate the salience network, which will shut down the default mode network. That's the beauty. We'll talk about that later on when we talk about the 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 depth of that, the gravity of gratitude talk will be after this. This is what we will talk next time. The gravity of gratitude means it has three components. One is the breathing, the pranayam component. Another one is the gratitude component, and when both are combined, eventually what will happen is you land. Actually, you are making use of the pranayam aspect while breathing. Sorry, while doing the gratitude thing, and that is how that works. Is what we will be discussing next time. That how meditation really happens. The mechanism of meditation. We will talk about the neuroscience part of it. Okay, so we'll talk about that later on. So next second one is deactivation of the default mode. That but same Om chanting by triggering the uh, um, salience network, it deactivates the default mode network. So this is how it is. So this is the prefrontal cortex, and this is your what you call uh,
Posterior
thalamocortical
cingulate.
region. Huh? Pardon me.
No, I was. Is that the posterior cingulate cortex, Shekharji? That one?
This is
That.
the posterior
Oh,
cingulate cortex, correct.
okay.
And close to
Right.
it is the thalamus. So that's why there is so much of excess of signal here. But originally it starts here. That's why I was thinking about that. Originally it starts here, and then it the delta the delta oscillation starts here, and it gets transferred somehow here, and then that whole thing takes over. So this is a posterior cingulate cortex which is going to get shut down eventually. So reduce mind wandering and increase calmness happens when default mode network gets silenced. Now that default mode network is silenced by uh, this one, salience network. This is the salience network. And this green part is the default mode network. This salience network takes over, and the salient networks come from the insular cortex, which is a zone for compassion. So that's why this Om chanting immediately in within few 3, 4, 5 minutes of chanting, immediately it activates that left or right insular cortex area immediately, and that is the essence of. That's why when you see somebody sitting in meditation for, let's say, half an hour to 45 minutes or so, it's you start to tear by unknown mechanism, which means that this particular salience network has got activated, and the default mode network has got silenced. And this is the place for compassion actually. Okay, now this particular, once that deactivation of default mode network means noise network, the one which creates all the noise, uh, all counter intention, all that nonsense that is going on in the brain is because of the default mode. So when this is silent, then it increases the focus, right? And enhances cognitive flexibility, improve mental clarity. So if you see, Sadhguru has tremendous mental clarity. Why? Because of he has at will he can silence his default mode network immediately by triggering what he he thinks about. He sits down and he thinks about mother. As much as I know, and he shows the universe that he is a Shiv Bhakta, but I am 100%, 100, beyond 100%. He is mother's devotee, big time mother's devotee, Amma's devotee. He is. And that's why whosoever is Amma's devotee will have default mode network immediately silenced, because it's Amma who does the job, not because compassion is her strength. Love and compassion is mother's. That particular part of insular cortex is mother's job, not male's job. It is a feminine part of our brain, and that's why a mother is important that time. By deactivating the default mode network, Om chanting helps in reduce stress, anxiety, improve attention, concentration, self-awareness, introspection, promote sense of calm and well-being. Now, another one is brainwave entrainment. How the default that this particular delta wave starts to train the other fellows also, who are who might be doing some other things, right? High activity and all that stuff. The repetitive Om chanting can lead the brainwave entrainment, where the brain waves synchronize with the frequency of the sound, typically the alpha, theta, and delta. Alpha, theta, and delta, these are the like uh, they may be erratic sometimes, but they will also fall in place along with Om chanting. Then this also gets added to the salient network. Salient network means insular cortex, the compassion network or the love network, that immediately. And that compassion and love is for yourself only. Self love and self compassion starts first, and then only you can give it out to the world. That is the beauty of this. Sarve bhavantu sukhina, sarve santu nirama. You cannot say it out. You have to feel it inside, and how the feeling is inside is only when you have tears coming out of your eyes in the deep meditative process. And This is what Sadhguru and others, great saints, are talking about. You have to feel. When Jesus Christ says, love thy neighbor as thyself, he is not saying it words. He is feeling it inside. He is in tears. He has self-compassion. Only when your heart is full of self-compassion, self-love, then only you can give it. You have to have it first to give it out. So this is the beauty of it. Okay, so I don't worry about the details of this. I mean, these are different delta waves. You can see how smooth and very, 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 very low detection level. Theta wave is little stronger. Alpha is much more stronger. Beta is all that gamma. So it helps in entrainment of these fellows, make them in synchronous rhythmic pattern rather than some kind of a. It does not cause. Uh, destructive interference of the waves. It causes a constructive interference of the waves. That's what it is all about. Om chanting en- enhances constructive interference of the rest of the wave patterns in the brain. Now, activation or reward system. This is the dopamine pathway. Basically, dopamine pathway is the guy who is doing the reward pathway and all that. So this also it activates. Now counterbalances fear. That is amazing. Stress reduction. Om chanting can decrease the production of stress hormone like cortisol and adrenaline, leading to sense of calm and relaxation. Cortisol is the bad boy in our system. It is the one responsible for stress and subsequent problems in the planet. If you are stressful, you will make your neighbor miserable and your wife miserable, in your spouse miserable, your children miserable, because misery is sitting in you. This is misery. Misery molecule is cortisol. Okay, so that's what it is. Om takes care of that. What is stress? Let's define this. I think I have shown this earlier, but it's worth seeing again. There is a place in the brain called thalamus, right? A small portion in the brain just above the pituitary. It releases some hormone and which activates the anterior pituitary, which itself releases some other another hormone called ACTH. It goes into the bloodstream and then it activates the adrenal cortex, which produces cortisol. Normally, the cortisol is released. Now, cortisol is not that bad as I have already told you. It is good for survival of the species. Fear is very stress was very essential because if somebody is not stressful, he will be eaten up by the lion, right, or some other predators. In order to save them from predator, they had to have increased cortisol, which actually increases the um, glucose supply inside the muscles. Lot of surge of glucose happen and lot of ATP, and then you can climb the tree in seconds. Otherwise, you will never climb. But once you are fearful, you will climb that. But that has to get stopped. So eventually it stops. But as if you are constantly producing more cortisol, then that negative feedback loop is inhibited and it doesn't work anymore and produces what? Stress, fear, increased cortisol, fight and flight response. The first target of this fight and flight and cortisol is impaired immune system. If somebody is suddenly having a situation attack and there you are, that's why during the pandemic time, COVID pandemic, those people who are 65 and above or those people who have had situations, some health situation, they were more susceptible to COVID infection than anybody because they have already impaired immune system to start with. And then impaired immune system causes inflammation. And this is the father of all these diseases. Metabolic disorder, neuropsychiatric, anxiety, depression, neurodegenerative, and cancer also. I did not put cancer here, but cancer is also one of those inflammatory diseases. And of course, autoimmune dysfunction. Autoimmune dysfunction means self-hate. The body itself hates oneself. So how do you know body is hating oneself? It the body that produces insulin, the antibody against insulin is formed. Now you cannot digest your own glucose. That's the problem. So autoimmune disease happened. The insulin receptor antibody gets formed. Autoimmune antibody gets formed. So That is another challenge, right? Digestive, cardiac disorders, all these diseases are because of inflammation, and inflammation because of immune system impairment. Immune system impairment is because of the increase in cortisol, and cortisol is an increase in cortisol is because of lack of om chanting. So you understand where the om chanting is helping in humanity? Unbelievable. So that's what it is. Increased parasympathetic activity, vocal vibrations, changing, changing, chanting produces a vibration of the throat and the mouth, which stimulate the vagus nerve branches in daring. See, vagus nerve is one of my most favorite nerves of all the nervous system, peripheral, central, everything combined. I love vagus nerve because vagus nerve network is something which you can deal with right now, right here. Doing mudras, vagus nerve. Doing the Brahmari pranayam, vagus nerve. Doing the Anulom Vilon, vagus nerve. Doing the chanting, vagus nerve. Everywhere vagus nerve is there. And that's why you can change the brain behavioral challenges by chanting. You can change the wiring of the brain by chanting. You can treat Alzheimer disease by chanting. I mean, this is why this is so is because there is a mechanism in place. Vagus nerve is that mechanism. Breathing pattern changes, right? Because when you are doing the deep exhalation, again inhalation, deep inhalation, and again this particular thing is just as good as Brahmari. So it wires the brain also. It reduces heat rate and improves respiratory function. Emotional expression also it helps by increasing the level of oxytocin, dopamine and endorphin. If you have body pain for some any kind of body pain, you chant Om half an hour and you will find it. There is no pain afterward. Why? Because endorphins are released, and endorphins are nothing but endogenous morphines. They have the almost similar structure as the morphine, but they are released by the brain. And dopamine, of course, is one of the key molecules in our life. Reduces stress and anxiety. Enhance. Moment you are away from stress and anxiety, your cognitive function immediately increases in immune system. So that's why when I say my father never fell sick, he was doing something which was scientifically sangat, listeners, shastra sangat thing he was doing constantly, and that's why he was all the time happy man, very happy. Now this is a vagus nerve network. Give me this is like wow. Look at this. Look at this. So huge. So you this particular network controls the brain actually because it is 10% efferent emissions from the brain to the rest of the body and 90% efferent from organ to the brain. So that's why it is so wonderful. This is the real thing. The real. Now some people say, well, this is Vegas nerve. I call it chakra. That what's wrong with that? Nothing wrong. That is Manipura chakra actually. And when the whole thing goes up, and this is how it goes up into the brain. First of all, is the nuclear tractus solitarius. It gets here, and then this fellow sends all the fiber signals everywhere, and that's how the whole thing is, including insular cortex. See that amygdala. Amygdala can be silenced nicely. Insular cortex can be activated. Prefrontal cortex can be activated. AAC, anterior singular cortex. See, anterior singular cortex is getting activated by home chanting. So this vagus nerve is one of the most beautiful nerves known to mankind. And of course, this particular thing, it's how gut activates this whole process. How the gut bacteria helps. If somebody is having constipation, which means the gut is not happy, and which means the nerve fiber terminals of vagus nerve here are not happy because they are not getting activated by the neurotransmitter generated by the bacteria using amino acids from the food. They are not getting activated, so you cannot see this guy getting activating any part of the brain. There are about like 10 different Some are neurotransmitters, some are vasoactive peptides, and they always act like neurotransmitter. These are the ones which are exact, these neurotransmitters are the ones which are exactly the same that are produced in the brain. Now, but you cannot inject neurotransmitter in the blood and say, okay, it can reach the brain. No, brain has a blood-brain barrier. So that neurotransmitter, no matter how much neurotransmitter you inject, it will not go there. It has to be triggered by another nerve system, which is called vagus nerve system, which, say for instance, this one specially, right? Let's say this gets activated by nitric oxide, and it all goes all the way like this, 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 and it goes here. Now, if this particular region is nitric oxide synthesizer here, then this fellow will synthesize nitric oxide in the brain and it will go all over. If this nitric oxide is not there, this fellow cannot synthesize nitric oxide. If this nerve ending is producing dopamine here in the large intestine, and if this does not get activated, this dopamine over here will not be activated in the substantia nigra, and that's where the movement disorder starts. The Parkinson disease is the disease of the gut, not of the brain. It affects the brain eventually, but it is coming here, starting here. The origin of Parkinson disease is here. Alzheimer disease is here. Dementia is here. This is the place where the brain disorder starts. It manifests in the brain because we are not taking care of the vagus nerve properly. Now, what all things can activate vagus nerve? Of course, Om chanting is there, which basically directly does the job from here itself. But right eating, right exercise, and right yogasans will help this much better, and then you will have no problem with the brain functioning properly. Brain is a slave of vagus, this network. Again, I repeat, brain is a slave of Manipura chakra. Okay, so these are the when you are just the facial part of the thing. How when you are doing the when you're doing the Om Brahmari pranayama, remember the places where I ask you to touch gently is this. These are the one. This particular one just below the nose, below the lips, stuff like that, and the ear, right? That's what it is. Now, increased gray matter. Long-term home chanting has been linked to increased gray matter in areas like hippocampus, which is basically the short-term memory place, right? And then anterior cingulate cord. Anterior means the front part of the green thing that I showed you, which is which is what is responsible for attention and error detection. Now, neuroplasticity. Oh, this is one of my another favorite aspect of vagus nerve and what you call Om chanting. Rewiring of the brain, increased gray matter, neurotransmitter regulation, default mode network, silencing that fellow, neural oscillation, mindful attention, and emotional regulation. These are the different things. I will not go into details of it, but you understand neuroplasticity is, let's say you have had a stroke. See, our brain is, we have erratic, let's say, blood pressure, right? Sometimes blood pressure is erratic. Now blood pressure is also not the cardiovascular disease. It is manifested in the cardiovascular system, but it is a kidney disease. If the kidney is not filtering your junk properly, what happens is sodium ions are excessive in the blood. Now what happens, sodium ion increases the water intake, and that increases the blood pressure. That's what it is. So if you can clean the kidney properly, you will not have blood pressure. Now, how do you clean kidney? By eating right, of course. And second thing is doing the uh, uh, hibiscus tea. Hibiscus tea is a good thing to clean the kidney. Hibiscus tea. extremely, it is caffeine free. It is very, very good for cleaning the kidney. Of course, you will urinate more, but that's great. Which means the clean kidney is getting clean more and more. The drink more water, that will set your blood pressure all right. And then blood pressure, and of course it decreases the cholesterol level also. Hibiscus tea, you go and Google hibiscus tea benefits, and you will see a whole lot of good stuff in there. So go for that. So so this is all there is to it. Now I would now what basically I had this uh, YouTube, but I'll skip that. What it shows is this area is releasing the neuroblasts. Neuroblast. Let me see if I can see that. Sorry about this. Is all junk.
No audio though, I think.
Don't know. Don't worry about the audio.
Yeah, I think is this the same video we have
We
seen?
don't need we don't need audio here. So these are the ones which are moving. This neuroblast cells. Look at the movement here. Neuroblast cells are moving. These are live photography of the brain. So that these are the ones which you saw live neuroblast, labeled neuroblast migrating into the cortical area, and that's how the repair process happens in our deep sleep. Brain constantly keeps repairing itself, and the cells that are coming out from the ventricle subventricular zone. Subventricular zone is there are two hollow cavities in the brain which is filled with cerebrospinal fluid. Cells that are lining the subventricular zone are stem cells, and they receive signal through the delta waves that this portion requires brain rewiring, or the plasticity is nothing but regaining the lost function by brand new neurons by replacing the old ones or dead ones. This is neuroplasticity. Okay, so that's okay. Let's do this. So, in summary, this is all we talked about right now, and what we have done is when will I know that I have done my Om chanting properly? This is a very important question I have been asked almost in all talks. So I thought I would include this. When the scripture starts reading you, this is not easy to understand, let me tell you, unless you have practiced it really. This is like explanation part. The experience part is important here. When you really sincerely practice Om sadhana, just Om, AUM, Om, Om, sincerely, what will happen is scriptures will start reading you. Let's say in Atharva Shirsha. How many people know Atharva Shirsha here? Pretty much, right? Many people know here, I think. And that's why I'm so excited to talk to you all. So what happens? When they say Twameva Pratyaksham Tattvamasi, Twameva Kevalam Kartasi, Twameva Kevalam Dhartasi, Twameva Kevalam Hartasi, Twameva Sarvam Khalvidam Brahmasi. It is not that we are praying to the Lord. Lord is saying that to us. This is essentially the prayer to the Lord Ganpati. But Ganpati ji is already this. He is already this. What are you telling him again and again? No, the thing is Ganpati ji is telling you you are this. Tattvamasi. That's what you are. Aham Brahmasmi. That's when you will say Aham Brahmasmi. Om sadhana, once that happens to you, when you start reading scriptures, and it's not the scripture telling you. See, you praise Hanumanji, you praise Lord Shiva. He doesn't require your praise. He is already that. He is beyond that also. He is beyond Tattvamasi. But what he is saying it to you is what is important. This is what you are. Tvameva pratyaksham tattvamasi. सुजना त्वमेव प्रत्यक्षं तत्त्वमसि त्वमेव केवलं कर्तासि त्वमेव केवलं धर्ता. This, once the scripture says this to you, know that sadhana has happened. Thank you very much.